Thank you so much for watching this video. I know I say that a lot, but truly, without you watching this video, combined with those that choose to support me on Patreon, I would not be able to do this. If this channel continues to grow, I hope to be able to dedicate more time to the production of these videos in the next month or two. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, I will be hosting my first live stream. I will give details on that when we get close to the time. And again, thank you. And a very special thank you to my newest patron supporter, Eric W. Stockley II. Thank you for your support. And a very extra special thank you to Captain Redneck, who a little over a month ago promoted himself to Admiral Captain Redneck. And he's just so awesome that his title now is officially Admiral Captain Redneck. Previously on the Anti-Trekker, the First Order begins its long, slow chase, and Leia takes flight. So, first thing I want to clarify a couple of points from my last video. Objections over the fact that Leia survived in space and used the Force with apparently no training. So let's start with her basic survival. This is the exact moment that the missiles hit. So if we break out our stopwatch and we fast forward to the moment when she comes back into the ship, the first frame we looked at was before Leia was sucked into space, and the last frame after she is placed safely on a gurney. So it is safe to say that if we use these two frames as a baseline, this is slightly more time than Leia was exposed to the vacuum of space. Based on that, the total exposure time was 1 minute and 51.08 seconds, which may seem like a really long time, especially because in film, it is a common trope that if you are exposed to the vacuum, you die like instantly. However, in the mid-1960s, NASA actually did some experiments using dogs and chimpanzees, and the dogs would typically survive 90 seconds of exposure, but commonly die after about 2 minutes of exposure. That would not bode well for Leia, since her time of 1 minute 51 seconds is a lot closer to 2 minutes than to 90 seconds. But it is still in the realm of possibility. All that being said, the chimpanzees actually did much better. They survived 3.5 minutes in a vacuum with no cognitive defects. That being said, they were not very realistic as to what Leia looked like while she was in space, because again, based on those NASA tests, what we should have seen was her body swell up to about twice its normal size, while gas is expelled from her bowels and stomach, causing simultaneous defecation, projectile vomiting, and urination, along with massive seizures and loss of consciousness, all while playing the beautiful Leia's theme music. Yeah, that would be horrifying. Yeah, a bit less realism on that front is probably a good thing. The bottom line is, could Leia have survived almost 2 minutes in space? Absolutely, 100% yes. But then we do run into another problem. Almost instantly in all the NASA tests, the animals lost consciousness. So how did Leia manage to stay conscious long enough to bring herself back to the ship? And how did she use the Force anyway? Well, the first part is easy. The Force. Assuming for a moment that Leia was able to use the Force, it is not unreasonable that it would help her stay conscious long enough to rescue herself. But how did she use the Force? I mean, clearly she had no training, right? Well, no. It is not clear that she had no training. The only thing that is clear is that she is not a Jedi. Remember, in Return of the Jedi, not only did Yoda tell Luke to pass on what he had learned to other members of his family, but Luke and Leia actually talked about this directly.
You have a power I don't understand and could never have.
You're wrong, Leia. You have that power too. In time, you'll learn to use it as I have.
So it was heavily implied that Luke intended to teach Leia. It is not unreasonable to assume that Leia did train with Luke at least a bit. In fact, I would be very surprised if Leia had zero training time with Luke at some point in the 20-plus years between the events of Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. And then maybe she just decided that her calling was to be a political and or military leader rather than a Jedi. All that being said, even if Leia had zero training, well, let's be frank, Rey had zero training, and she does a whole lot more than what Leia did. So if you want to argue that Leia should not have been able to have the skills that she demonstrated, well, thanks to Rey, we now know that you don't need training to use the Force. Subversion. Yay. And by the way, if we have to accept that Rey can indeed use the Force, Leia has the advantage of a whole lot more experience. And even though she may not have been formally trained, we know as far back as Empire Strikes Back that she was at least using some basic Force abilities. Now, Leia is passed out after her little spacewalk, so they take her to the medical bay. And her space friendship magic bracelet, are we sure this is not the One Ring? I mean, really, could this be the one space magic friendship wrist ring or something? Because it looks a lot like the One Ring the way it just kind of jumps off of her here. Anyway, so Space Gollum finds the one space ring and hides in his space cave and starts calling it his precious. Meanwhile, Rey has decided that sleeping on a stone slab outside of Luke's home when it looks like it could start raining at any second when a nice comfy space freighter is right down the hill makes sense. I mean, it's not like Luke Skywalker is going anywhere. And you know, in this very shot that we're looking at, there are at least 4 stone buildings that she could sleep in, and if she felt like the hike down to the Falcon was just too far. But whatever. Meanwhile, half a mile down the path, Chewbacca proves that he is the only one with half a brain left in this film by not only choosing to sleep on the Falcon, but hey, let's enjoy a nice campfire beforehand. And okay, that is funny. And I have to say, these little porgs look like they just might be pretty darn tasty. So in some ways, it's really too bad that this movie was not as popular as the old ones. I would be willing to bet that if this film had the cultural impact that the original trilogy did, someone could sell Porg brand Cornish game hens and make a killing. Anyway, Chewie is about to take a nice big bite of Porg when he is confronted by the cutest ever guilt trip that we've ever seen on film. Chewie decides to look the other way so he doesn't have to look at them and sees this little guy. Okay, you got me. This thing is so ridiculously cute that you cannot help but love it. So Chewie growls at it and it flies away, and he begins to look at its roasted porg as a mysterious figure walks behind him into the Falcon. Chewbacca feels guilty, so he doesn't notice the stranger behind him, and he cannot eat his roasted porg. Now, why did I spend so much time on a scene that has zero impact on the story as a whole? Well, frankly, because that I wanted you to see there was at least one scene in this movie that I have no complaints about. I thought that Chewbacca was in character, he was entertaining, the porgs were adorable. It was a nice little character moment for Chewie, but it would not be me if I didn't have something bad to say at this point. So 2 things. First, it's really kind of disappointing that Chewbacca does so little in this film, that this is his only real character moment. And 2, I personally think that the scene would have been funnier if after the shot of the super cute porg, we just cut to Chewbacca sitting in front of the fire with 5 additional porgs roasting while he's chowing down on the first 2. That would have been even more in character for Chewbacca, but that's just me. The mysterious figure in the background was, of course, Luke. So I guess Rey sleeping on the stone slab in front of Luke's house didn't do her much good since he just went out on his own anyway. Whatever, it's not the Force, so quantum. Anyway, Luke apparently wanted to poke around the Falcon because he spent so much time on that ship as he was on it once. for his trip to Alderaan that got sidetracked to Yavin 4. No, really, that's it. Look it up. Luke never again set foot on the Falcon. Seriously, Luke should have more feelings of sentiment for his X-Wing than the Falcon. But, you know, the not force quantum. Luke spots some product placement for Solo, a Star Wars adventure, which I'm sure is going to be awesome. Seriously, how is that even supposed to be, Han? I mean, have you seen the trailer? This movie is going to suck. Luke, never having had any interaction with these dice before, decides to steal them, I guess? So now he's a coward, a hypocrite, and a thief? Okay, well, at least he's not a liar. Yet. Oh, and before you say something about it, yes, I know that the dice have always been there on the Falcon, but we've never seen Luke do anything with them. So for all he knows, they're just an air freshener. After Luke steals the dice from his dead best friend, he mopes around for a minute, and R2-D2. Oh yeah, I remember him. He was cute before BB-8 showed up. Anyway, R2 wakes up because, you know, robots sleep. And I hate to say this, I really do, but he turns his head twice.
R2? R2? Yes.
Now, why do I say I hate to see this? Well, because while I hate Rian Johnson for what he did in the writing of this film, I have to be fair, he's a very talented director, and I genuinely hate to see such a stupid and fundamental flaw crop up in such a technically flawless film. Especially when, even with my limited editing skills, I can fix this scene.
R2? R2? Yes. R2? R2? Yes. R2? R2? Yes.
That's right. I am officially a better editor than the editor of The Last Jedi. Suck on that. Anyway, Luke tells R2 that he's not going back and nothing could possibly change his mind. So R2 shows Luke a clip of his sister back when she was hot and he wanted to bone her, and that changes his mind. Except that it doesn't. I mean, the way that he acts after R2 shows him the clip, well, honestly, confuses the heck out of me, because he specifically says he is not going back, and R2 could not change his mind. Then R2 shows him the clip, and Luke says that was a cheap move. So that sounds like Luke has changed his mind and will go back. But then he never goes back. So, huh? However, he does immediately go to Rey and tell her that tomorrow he will begin to train her and that he will give her 3 lessons and teach her the ways of the Jedi and why they must end. We got a couple of problems here. First of all, Luke said, I'm not going back, but then after being shown that, instead of going back, he decides to train Rey. So I think there's something missing here, because the not going back and the training Rey are 2 completely different topics of discussion, but whatever. Not force quantum. And let's talk about, okay, so he's going to give Rey 3 lessons to teach her the ways of the Jedi and why they must end. So that brings up a couple of additional problems. I'm kind of confused, because if you look at Empire Strikes Back, Luke was in his early 20s, just probably a few years older than Rey is supposed to be in this film. And Yoda said he was too old to begin the training. In the prequels, we learned that at 9 years old, Anakin is considered too old to begin the training. Obi-Wan and Anakin were both in training for at least 10 years before attaining the rank of Jedi. But Luke can teach you in 3 lessons? Really? And besides that, if Luke genuinely feels that the Jedi must end, then why in the world would he ever train Rey? Why not just teach her why there can be no Jedi? You know, do what makes sense. Think about it this way. In this country, in the United States, meth addiction is a serious problem. So how about this? In order to get meth off the streets, the first step is to teach everybody how to make meth. What the f? Well, the Resistance fleet is still pulling away from the First Order, and it does appear that they've increased the distance between them since last we saw them. Now this is Commander D'Acy, or D'Acy, or I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce her name. I found it on IMDb, which is kind of a shame that that's how I had to find her name, because she feels like kind of an interesting character. She's an intelligent military officer, but also seems a bit unsure of herself. She knows what her duty is, but she's torn by her emotions. And this is just in a couple of scenes that she's actually in. Anyway, Commander D'Acy, I'm going to say, is delivering the rather grim news that Leia is unconscious, and the rest of the leadership, including Admiral Akbar, are dead. Which, of course, has C-3PO upset. Oh, yeah, remember him? He's about as important as Chewbacca in this film. Oh, and hey, wait a minute. Remember, this movie takes place immediately after The Force Awakens. So, what happened to his red arm? I mean, he even pointed out his red arm in The Force Awakens. The Force. So Commander D'Acy says that Leia is out of commission and the leadership is all dead, so the chain of command falls on Vice Admiral Holdo of the cruiser Ninka. Wait. So now it's a cruiser? It was a frigate before, but so was Hux right when he said there were 3 cruisers? But are you really trying to say that the Ninka and the Raddus are the same type of ship? I mean, this is bad writing. Anyway, Admiral Holdo then takes the room. As soon as Admiral Holdo gets up, she starts to give a speech.
400 of us on 3 ships. We're the very last of the Resistance.
Wait. The Resistance is 400 people? Remember, they have not taken heavy losses yet. Yes, they lost a few fighters and bombers, but each fighter was only 1 person and each bomber was only 2. They did lose 1 of the frigates. And yes, I am going to continue to call them by their proper classification. I'm sorry, but I cannot be expected to be consistent with inconsistency. But that means that before they lost that frigate, I mean, what? Maybe the Resistance was 500 people. What exactly were they planning to resist? Why did the First Order even care about them? Anyway, Holdo goes on.
But we're not alone. In every corner of the galaxy, the downtrodden and oppressed know our symbol, and they put their hope in it. We are the spark that will light the fire.
To say that the downtrodden and oppressed people find hope in their symbol, keep in mind that this movie does take place right after The Force Awakens, so that means that up until a few days ago, the Republic was in control, which in turn means that apparently the Republic was in the habit of oppressing people, and those people look at the Republic's symbol for hope? Huh? Look, I know that the speech is supposed to be inspirational, but frankly, it sounds to me like Admiral Holdo does not know what she is talking about. In fact, if you look at the way that just look at her face when she says, "May the Force be with us," these subtle facial expressions look like she's feeling quite good about the fact that she is in charge. Frankly, Holdo has a smug level of Picard times Riker. Wow. So then we hear Poe say the following.
That's Admiral Holdo? Battle of Chiron Belt, Admiral Holdo? Not what I expected.
Now, a lot of people think that Poe is upset that Admiral Holdo is a woman because, you know, Poe has always had trouble with women in power. Before anyone thinks that, by the way, that I'm getting into kind of political territory here, I'm really not, because let me say this. I do not think that that's what Poe was trying to imply at all. And in fact, I agree with Poe. I mean, look at the officers of the Resistance in these pictures. Now, let's just focus on the women in these pictures. There are a lot of women in the room, at least 20 from my count, and all of them with the exception of Admiral Haldo, are wearing proper military uniforms. And none of them, again, that is, none of them, again, with the exception of Admiral Haldo, have a hairstyle that is more indicative of going to a rave than attending a high-level security meeting. So yeah, when Poe says that's not what he's expecting from a battle-hardened admiral, I have to agree with him on that one. So apparently, while Haldo is actually giving a speech about how their symbol is an inspiration to all those poor people that are going to help them win the fight, she is too good to wear that same symbol, unlike every other person in the room. And do we really need to introduce another character at this point? Yes, a lot of fans were upset that they didn't use Admiral Akbar. But even if you didn't want to use his character for some reason, how about Commander D'Acy herself, or Lieutenant Connix, who we met earlier? Why do we need someone who apparently considers herself better than everyone? Well, I'll be honest, that could have been interesting, but they do nothing with it. Why do we need this new character? Why do we need to introduce a new character out of left field that doesn't fit in with anybody else now? Why? Oh yeah, subversion. Yay. You know what, Ryan Johnson? You can suck my...
Hit the like button, you will. Likes lead to comments. Comments lead to conversations. Conversations lead to understanding. Go to Patreon and support the anti-trucker you must, if supporting his videos you want. Yes, support his videos. Then listen to this at the end of the videos. You will not